Welcome to my 190th video on my work with OO gauge. This part will feature a Trix Twin Railways TTR crane set that I bought on eBay, and my attempts to fix it up and to get it running on my tracks, some of them at least. As you'll know if you've seen some of my previous videos, I'm keenly interested in cranes as well as in railways, so I'm particularly interested in railway cranes. So when I saw this little Trix Twin tin plate crane set on eBay UK at a reasonable price, I had no hesitation in clicking buy it now. I did struggle a bit with this set, as you'll see, but spoiler alert, I did ultimately achieve my original intent, although only after a couple of days of faffing around. The crane set came like this in its original Trix box. Here's the end of that box showing the TTR mark and the product information. Just to recap, Trix Twin Railways were so called because they were based on a three-rail system, but unlike Hornby 003 rail, the two outer rails were isolated from each other and powered separately, so you could run two trains at once on the same connected set of track, one train powered through one outer rail and the other train powered through the other outer rail, both sharing the centre rail. This means that Trix, TTR, wagons, coaches, etc. have wheels that are insulated, so there's no electrical connection from side to side, so you can run that stock on modern two-rail systems, if it can manage to get over the points, etc. Trix locos have centre rail pickups and also pick up from one of the outer rails. At least they did when sold, although it seems that you quite often come across them converted for two-rail operation. Here's the crane set in its box. I'm not generally very bothered about boxes, but I must say I found this one particularly charming with its glued-in wood blocks protecting the ends of the stock. The crane set was basically tin plate with cast metal upper parts. The wheels were plastic, but those were the only plastic parts. The set came to me like this, with the hook detached and included separately in a little bag. The crane had a winding system with nicely made gears for raising and lowering the hook, but it used a rather crude system for operating the jib, involving a brace that could be fitted into one of several slots to hold the jib at various angles. Here is the jib raised to its highest angle by inserting the brace into the slot furthest out on the jib. This doesn't look too bad when it's done, but obviously the actual process of raising and lowering the jib is entirely unrealistic. If the brace is taken out of the slots completely, the jib can just about be lowered until it rests on the jib wagon. I did try to straighten the brace out a bit to get the jib to rest on the wagon better. The winding mechanism uses brass gears. Trix were particularly keen on using gears in their locos, so I guess they had the means ready to get the gears for this crane. They're good, solid, well-made metal gears. There's a little spring that engages with the teeth of the larger gear. This prevents the gears from turning loosely, but allows the gears to be turned in either direction, with the end of the spring just popping over the teeth of the larger gear as it turns. Here's the hook. It was also metal. There were a couple of rough protrusions, and I assumed that these were just casting errors and filed them off. I tied the hook to the end of the cord that was already on the crane. I had thought of putting on new cord, but what was there was basically okay. I put a little dab of CA glue on the knot so that it wouldn't come undone. This basically worked okay, except that the cord had been wrapped round the spool for so long that it didn't straighten out, even with the weight of the hook on the end. I wetted the cord just with water on a cotton bud. This, with a little pulling and waiting till it dried, did persuade the cord to straighten out. I lifted the crane's own jib wagon with the hook and left it like that whilst the cord dried out. I cleaned and oiled the gears and their spring a bit. Here's the crane on the bench lifting an LMS furniture container. Note that the crane does feature a solid metal block on the back behind the jib, which serves as a counterweight, allowing it to lift a load without falling over, which of course is the same principle applied on real cranes. Here's the crane with the jib stowed as best as I could manage, ready to run in a train. I had bought this crane with the idea that it would go nicely on my Hornby 003 rail tabletop railway, and here it is on the 003 rail track behind the Hornby N2 loco. However, my attempt to run it like this was a failure. The crane set simply could not get over the 003 rail points, and derailed completely whenever I tried to pull it over a set of points. The reason for this was that the Trix wheels fitted to the set had extremely deep flanges on them, and Hornby 003 rail points have metal pieces at the frog which are quite shallow and only allow for quite small flanges, so whenever the crane's wheels hit these frog pieces they just got knocked up right off the track. I tried the crane set on my regular Hornby layout using modern Hornby and Pico Code 100 track. The crane set would just about run there, although it did bobble a lot going over the points, even with this modern track.
Well, I don't know what Trix Twin track was like, because I don't have any. But this crane, I couldn't get it to run at all on the Hornby 003 rail track. It just couldn't get over the points at all. And it doesn't much like running on this modern Hornby track either, because the flanges on its wheels are just too big. So it bounces around a lot. I'll see, this is a repainted Hornby 002 rail R1 it's being pulled behind. We'll see if we can get it to go around, but it don't run very evenly, as I say, because the flanges on the wheels are just too big, so it's bobbling around because the wheels are virtually hitting the sleepers, and then when they get to the points they really have trouble. Whoa, see, rockety rock. We did get it over the points, but I couldn't get it over the Hornby, the 003 rail points at all. I can just about get it over these points, but, well, it's obviously not very... Whoa, rock. So that's about it, and that's about the best I can do in terms of running it. I was planning to run it on the, to devote it to the Hornby 00, but that's no use because it just won't run round the Hornby 00 with tabletop at all. It can't get over the Hornby 00 points at all. And it can barely run on this. So we'll have to see.
I gave up initially at that point, figuring that the crane set was an interesting little curio, and at least it sort of ran on my modern track. But then I had another thought, actually, whilst going to sleep at night, as quite often seems to be the case. The problems with running the crane set were caused by the wheel flanges. I could have tried to cut or grind down those flanges, but that would have been an unpleasant process, and it might not have been easy to get a good result. But I had a bunch of 003 rail wagon wheels around. They came from some 00 tank wagons that I bought quite a while ago and converted for 2-rail running by fitting 00 rail wagon wheels. So if I could remove the Trix wheels and fit the 00 wheels, that could fix the problem, so long as the 00 wheels would run okay in the Trix axle boxes. Unlike 00 axle boxes, there were no separate parts for retaining the axles on the Trix axle boxes. I was a little nervous to try, as I didn't want to break the crane set, but I was able to remove the Trix axles by just flexing the axle hangers out a bit. The Trix axle hangers were made of 2 layers of tin plate, and so were not rigid like 00 cast axle hangers. The Trix axles were metal with blunt ends fitted with plastic wheels. I measured the Trix axles, and they were a bit under 26mm, and yes, I finally fitted a new battery in my calipers, so the display is clear again. The 00 axles that I had were a bit over 26mm. I used a grinding wheel in a rotary tool to just take down the ends of the double O axles a bit to bring them to about the same length as the Trix axles. And then I popped the double O axles into the axle hangers on the crane wagons. Here are both pieces now fitted with double O 3-rail wheels and axles. Of course, this means that the crane set can't be used on 2-rail track, as it would now short out the controller, but I always plan to use this set on my double O 3-rail table. And here is the set, now with its double O 3-rail wheels back on the 3-rail track. And since it now has double O wheels, presumably there should be no excuse for it to refuse to run on the double O track. Let's see.
Well, I have my problems, but I don't give in easy. Of course, not every problem can be solved, but I think this one has been now. This is this Trix crane set, I beg your pardon. The Trix crane set, but, well, it's sort of now, it's a hybrid crane set. It's a Trix crane set, but it's got Hornby wheels on it because it just would not go around this layout with the Trix wheels on. The flanges were just too big. So I changed them out and I put Hornby 003 rail wheels on it, which I'd taken off some tank wagons so I could run those tank wagons on the 2-rail layout. I put Hornby 00, I bought some Hornby 002 rail wheels and put on those tank wagons. So I had a bunch of spare Hornby 003 rail wheels sitting around, and I put some on this. So let's see, I think we'll zoom out a little bit further to make it easier for me to follow things. Behind the N2, oops, there we are. And, as you'd expect, given that it's got Hornby wheels on it, it does not bobble at all as it goes over the Hornby points. See, point, no bobble. Runs fine over the Hornby points now. Couldn't run over, it just derailed all the time going over those Hornby points with the Trix wheels. Well, the engine bobbled a bit going over that point. Hornby 3-rail points can be a bit of a challenge even to Hornby 3-rail stock. But no, this Trix. So I've now got a little Trix crane set that will work on my 3-rail layout quite nicely. There you go. So some problems can be solved, and that one has been.